All right, so let's dive right in. Today we're tackling a pretty tricky subject, huh?
Yeah, sounds like it.
Office politics, but with a twist.
Mm.
We're looking at it specifically through the lens of adults on the autism spectrum.
Okay, I like where this is going.
We're going to be dissecting this blog post called Adult Autism and Office Politics, Recipe for Disaster
Mm.
from, get this, Cheap ABA.
Okay, so diving right into the deep end there.
You know it. It really gets into why all those unwritten rules of the office
Oh, I know those.
can feel like a total minefield, especially for autistic folks.
Right, totally. It's like everyone else got the cheat sheet or something.
It's so true. And the blog post, it kind of points this out. There's like this disconnect between what's expected in a typical workplace
Mm.
and the actual like lived experience of someone on the spectrum.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes I feel like folks don't even realize the things they're doing.
Right. Exactly. Like imagine you walk into a meeting and everyone's whispering what's going through your head. Are they talking about you? Did something go wrong? Or is it just like casual office chatter?
You'd be freaking out.
Right. And that kind of ambiguity, it can be stressful for anyone.
Yeah.
But especially for someone on the spectrum.
Totally. It's like sensory overload.
Yeah. And the post actually digs into a bunch of specific challenges that come up, for autistic adults when it comes to office politics.
Like what?
So one of the biggest ones, and I think we've all experienced this to some degree, is social interaction.
Oh, for sure.
Those cues, right? Tone of voice, body language, it's like a whole other language.
It really is.
And for some people, it's hard enough to keep up with one language, let alone two. And those cues, they can be really tough to decipher for autistic adults.
You said it. Misunderstandings galore. It's like,
Exactly. Like everyone else got the instruction manual and you're just trying to figure out the game as you play.
the worst.
Right. One thing that really stood out to me in this post, though, was how it talked about the need for structure and routine. And I think a lot of times that's seen as a strength, right, for autistic individuals.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Being organized, having a plan. I mean, who doesn't love that, right?
Right. But then you throw in this constantly shifting world of office politics.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's all about, like, being flexible and adaptable, and suddenly that need for structure.
Sure, clashes hard.
It totally clashes, Sudden changes, unclear expectations, those last-minute requests that can throw anyone off.
Absolutely.
But for someone who really thrives on predictability and managing all that sensory input, it can be like a recipe for overwhelm.
Like a system overload almost.
Yeah, and it's not just, about liking a tidy desk. It's really about keeping that carefully balanced equilibrium, to avoid feeling overwhelmed.
That makes total sense.
And then on top of all of that,
What? There's more.
there's more. There's this whole issue of assertiveness.
Ugh, I hate asking for things.
The blog post talked about how some autistic adults, they might hesitate, to speak up for themselves, advocate for their needs, maybe push back when they need to.
Yeah, I can see that.
And unfortunately, that can sometimes lead to their contributions being overlooked.
Oh, no.
Or even worse.
What could be worse than being overlooked?
Taken advantage of.
Ugh, that's awful. I hate that happens.
Yeah, they may not, be comfortable with the same kind of tactics that other people use to get ahead.
Yeah, I get that. Like having to play the game,
Oh, right, exactly. And so we've got this, like, the social aspect, right? The need for structure, and then the assertiveness piece.
Okay, so 3 strikes, you're out.
Well, hold on, because there's another hurdle
Oh, no, come here.
the blog post brings up, and honestly, it makes me shudder a little bit.
What is it?
Networking.
Ugh, networking, the worst.
I know, right? Even for, like, quote-unquote normal people.
Huh, normal people.
Unstructured social events, like, they can be so anxiety-inducing. But then, you layer on the fact that for someone on the autism spectrum, those situations, they're not just anxiety-inducing, but they can be incredibly overwhelming. Like, from a sensory perspective, right?
Yeah, it adds a whole other layer of, like, complexity.
Right. It's like you're trying to have a conversation, but the music's too loud and the lights are too bright, and there's like 85 conversations happening at once.
And forget the weird smells.
Oh, yeah. The smells. I forgot about the smells.
Yeah.
So, yeah, as if all those hurdles weren't enough.
There's more. You're killing it.
The blog post, it calls out this thing. It's like a phenomenon. They call it social hierarchy BS.
Social hierarchy BS. Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Okay, so this is where it gets good.
All right, lay it on me.
You ready for this? Social hierarchy BS.
Yeah, I think so. Hit me.
It's all about these like unwritten rules, who's in, who's out.
Oh, so like high school never really ends.
It never ends. It's like high school, but with like paychecks and
Oh
deadlines.
man, that sounds terrible.
Right. And the blog post, it actually describes some classic office like archetypes.
Like what?
Okay, so picture this. You've got your drama queen or king
Oh, I know that one.
who thrives on stirring up conflict, soaking up attention.
Yeah, we've all worked with that person.
Then you've got your backstabbers, whispering behind colleagues' backs.
The gossip mongers.
Exactly. And then to top it all off, you've got those managers who play favorites,
Ugh, the worst.
creating this environment that feels like unfair and honestly kind of demoralizing, right?
It's like, how is anyone supposed to navigate this minefield?
Right. It's a lot, and it's something we're going to dig into right after this.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat here. I
Yeah.
know, right? It is a lot. But the good news is this blog post, it doesn't just like leave you hanging with all these challenges, you
Oh,
know.
goodness.
It actually has this whole section called Tips for Success.
Okay.
And honestly, I think there's some really practical advice in there. Stuff
Okay.
that can be helpful for like anyone really.
So not just people on the spectrum.
Right. Like even if you're, neurotypical, I think this stuff can still be super useful for navigating all those like murky office waters.
So let me get this straight.
Yeah.
They're not suggesting that you suddenly become this like smooth-talking, backslapping master manipulator, like you got to play the game to win the game.
Oh, no, not at all. It's more about recognizing that the system, like the whole office environment, it's not always set up in a way that's, super neurodiversity friendly.
Right.
And so these tips are kind of like strategies, right?
Yeah.
To help you work within that system, even if it's not ideal.
I like that, strategies.
Yeah. And the first one is all about preparation.
Oh, okay. So instead of getting caught off guard by everything, you're like going in with a game plan.
Exactly. The blog post, it really emphasizes like taking the time to review agendas before meetings,
Okay.
brainstorming potential questions, maybe even practicing certain social interactions that you think might happen.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Kind of like a dress rehearsal for your brain, right?
That makes a lot of sense, actually, especially when you consider like the sensory overload stuff we were talking about before.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like if you know what to expect, it can really help manage that anxiety.
Totally. And this actually leads right into the second tip, which is all about clear communication.
Oh, okay.
Like using direct language, avoiding ambiguity, confirming that everyone's understanding what's being said.
Okay.
That can go a long way in preventing all those frustrating misunderstandings that can happen, especially when social cues are getting missed.
I can see that. But I guess clear communication is important for everyone, right?
True.
So what makes this tip, specifically challenging for people on the spectrum?
Well, you see, for a lot of autistic individuals, interpreting those subtle cues like tone of voice or facial expressions, it can be really hard.
Yeah.
So those unspoken nuances, the things that like neurotypical people often rely on to convey meaning, they can get lost in translation.
Mm.
But by being super explicit and direct with your communication, you're reducing the chance of those misunderstandings happening.
So it's like leveling the playing field a bit.
Exactly. Communication-wise, at least.
And that actually ties into the next tip, right? Which was asking questions.
Yes. The blog post really encourages autistic adults to, like, not hesitate, to seek clarification when something's unclear.
Yeah. I can see how that might be tricky, though.
Oh, how so?
Well, you don't want to come across as, like, not getting it, like you're not smart enough to figure it out.
Right. I totally get that concern. But think about it this way.
Right.
Sometimes those unwritten rules, they're so ingrained in the office culture that people don't even realize they're not being explicit.
Oh, interesting.
And so by asking questions...
You're actually helping them out, too.
Exactly. You're showing that you're engaged, you're willing to learn.
Right.
And it can actually prevent bigger issues from popping up later on down the road.
Plus, it benefits everyone involved.
Exactly. Everyone's on the same page.
Okay, that makes sense.
So this next tip, it really resonated with me. It's about seeking support.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the blog post talks about how important it is to, build relationships with colleagues or mentors who are understanding and can offer guidance.
It's like having someone in your corner,
Right. Like someone who gets it.
Yeah. And I imagine that can be so beneficial, like navigating those really tricky social situations.
Absolutely. Even having just one person
Yeah.
you can confide in, bounce ideas off of, get advice from,
It can make all the difference.
it's like a lifeline, you know, in the middle of a storm.
I love that analogy.
And you know what? Sometimes those supportive colleagues,
Yeah.
they aren't even the people you'd expect.
Oh, that's so true.
You might find allies in the most, unexpected places.
You never know.
It's all about finding those genuine connections, you know.
It really is.
And then finally, the blog post, it stresses something super important.
Okay, what's that?
Embracing your strengths.
Yes. This is so crucial.
So I know, right?
Because oftentimes those very traits that might make office politics like extra challenging, they can also be incredible assets in the workplace.
Exactly. Think about the strengths that, autistic individuals often bring to the table. Attention to detail, focus, logical thinking, a unique perspective, you know? These are all qualities that a lot of employers, they really value.
For sure.
It's about finding a role and an environment where those strengths are not only recognized,
Yeah.
but celebrated.
So it's about like playing to your strengths and finding a workplace where you can be your authentic self.
Yes.
Autism and all.
Exactly. It's not about forcing yourself to fit into a mold that doesn't work for you.
Right.
It's about finding a space where your unique talents and contributions, they're truly appreciated.
I love that, you know? Like you don't have to pretend to be someone you're not.
Right. And it's not even just about, autism.
Yeah.
It's about finding that right fit for anyone. Like what your skills and passions,
Yeah.
they line up with, what the workplace actually needs.
Totally. This has been like seriously eye-opening. So thank you so much
Oh, of course.
for breaking down these like really complex challenges
Yeah.
and giving us some actual advice that people can use.
Oh, it's my pleasure, truly. This is it's such an important topic, you know.
It really is.
And I'm glad we could shed some light on it.
Me too. So for those of you listening out there,
Yeah.
think about a time when you felt totally blindsided at work, you know? Like when something changed unexpectedly.
I hate when that happens.
Right, like maybe a project got scrapped or a new manager came in and suddenly everything's different.
Ugh, yeah, that's the worst.
Now imagine experiencing that kind of like upheaval
Yeah.
on a regular basis because those subtle cues that usually signal those changes, they don't register for you.
That would be so stressful.
It's a lot. And that's the reality for many autistic adults, you know,
Yeah.
trying to navigate the workplace.
And it's not just about being aware of those challenges, right?
No.
It's about understanding that, we all experience the world differently. And those differences,
Yeah.
they can be, incredibly valuable.
Right.
Imagine, a workplace
Well.
where neurodiversity is, truly embraced.
Yeah.
Where individuals, they feel supported to, really leverage their unique strengths.
Yeah. Like,
Oh.
what if we actually saw those differences as strengths?
Exactly. The innovation, the creativity, it's
Yeah.
what could we unlock if we created that kind of environment?
That's such a powerful thought. So now that you've heard all of this, you know, about these dynamics and these challenges,
Yeah.
what strategies resonate most with you? You know, what about your workplace? How could you adapt these tips for your own unique situation? Because this deep dive, it's just the beginning, you know?
It's a starting point.
Keep exploring, keep learning, and remember,
You got this.
you've got this.